Well, hello there. Happy Sunday, friends, lovers. This is 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir.
Hi.
I'm Robert Nasir. I'm here with Amy Nasir.
Myself.
Who's looking gorgeous today. Check this out on video.
I have my puffy sleeves.
Puffed sleeves?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Very elegant and in fashion.
Yes, very Anne of Green Gables. On this Sunday, November 15th, 2020, the 320th day of 2020, with 46 days remaining in the year. 46 days until 2021.
Woohoo! Yeah!
Oh my holy gosh.
Get in shape, because gotta be dancing when that happens.
That's right. And 40 days until Christmas. I've got to learn how to roll my R's. 40 days until Christmas. And just 350 days until Halloween.
Yay!
Halloween 2021. And on this date, November 15th in 1867, 153 years ago, the first stock ticker was unveiled in New York City.
That's like the ticker tape.
Yeah, just 23 years after Samuel Morse sent the first telegraph message from Washington, D.C. to Baltimore, Maryland on May 24th, 1844. On this date in 1867, the first stock ticker was unveiled in New York City. The advent of the ticker ultimately revolutionized the stock market by making up-to-the-minute prices available to investors around the country. Prior to this development, information from the New York Stock Exchange, which had been around since 1792.
What?
Traveled by mail or messenger. The stock market has been around since 1792.
That is amazing.
Holy heck. Ticker was the brainchild of Edward Callahan, who configured a telegraph machine to print stock quotes on streams of paper tape.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting to me because I'd forgotten that telegraphs used these paper tape streams.
Yeah.
And I always think of more like you'd see the telegraph operator in World War I or World War II with just an earphone and then writing it down as he heard the dit dot dash. But no, they already had paper tape. So they were developed into the stock ticker and unveiled on this day. In fact, that made possible the later development of the ticker tape parade.
Hooray.
The first ticker tape parade was on October 29th, 1886, marking the dedication of the Statue of Liberty.
Oh, that is so sweet.
That's right.
I would have loved to have been there with that. You know, instead of confetti, you just rain down all the ticker tapes.
Yep.
All the evidence of productivity and creativity and capitalism to commemorate something so wonderful and honorable, and
it's such a cause and effect relationship.
It is.
You do the things, you do the business, and then you use those. You know, you've got all this paper laying around. The unusual way to celebrate was inspired by the stock ticker. A machine of the late 19th, 20th centuries that tracked financial data over telegraph lines and stamped it on strips called ticker tape. When Wall Street realized that throwing these ribbons of paper out the window was a fun way to celebrate, a new tradition was born.
So nice.
Gotta love that. So happy birthday to the stock ticker. Today is also National Drummers Day. So a shout out to all of you drummers. And, you know, if you define your terms broadly enough, everybody's a drummer.
If you tap on your desk.
Don't we all, though? Pencil in your hand, beating drums on your steering wheel column in your automobile so much that it rattles when you turn. Oh, wait, I think only I did that. But happy Drummers Day to Bill Bruford and Alan White, drummers of my favorite band.
Yes.
And Neil Peart, the most incredible rock drummer that ever lived. We lost him recently, but his legacy is unmatched.
It is. He's a
and
legend.
Happy Drummers Day to Amy, my
Goodness.
favorite drummer.
Well, thank you. I'm a natural drummer.
Drummer of Trevor and multiple projects.
I have received no lessons from anywhere. I've just
no
done
lessons.
it.
Thank you very much, Pop.
Right. Hey, bonus points if anybody has any idea what that was about.
Oh, everybody knows that line, right?
Sure.
Right?
Where is that line from?
No lessons. That's right. Happy Drummers Day to Matt and Crash and Jim and Guns and all of the drummers that I've played with. You guys are awesome.
Those who you just rattled off are great drummers.
The great drummers. The first recognizable drums animals beat on things like drums. Drums have been around forever. First recognizable drums were alligator skin drums found in China from 5050 BC.
Wow.
From 7,000 years ago.
We're a clever species, us human beings.
We are. The drumstick. Here's a pair of drumsticks. I was going to bring a drum kit up and show it off, but I decided that was too big a prop.
It's in its packaging still. You must free it.
Yeah, these drumsticks have not been used yet. We've still got the wrap on them. The drumstick was first invented in approximately 1300. People have beaten on things with sticks rhythmically before that.
Sure.
But the first proper drumsticks were invented in 1300. The Ludwig Drum Company introduced the first drum pedal, the first bass pedal, in 1909. Mm-hmm. And the other important thing in drum history was Wipeout was released in 1963 by the Safaris. Oh, and the articles that I'm reading also say that Animal from the Muppets was inspired by Keith Moon of The Who, which is an important bit of information
Animal.
there. It's everybody's favorite drummer.
Jennifer says, give us a solo, Amy.
All right. Let me hand you those drumsticks.
There you go.
Is that awesome or is that awesome?
Jeez.
Amy's my favorite drummer because she has perfect rhythm. People who've seen me play guitar and do things like that online know that I can play a lot of different instruments, but I ain't got no rhythm. I sound clumsy, so Amy is just the best.
Well, Jennifer does mention John Bonham, so...
John Bonham was a rock.
Yes.
He was the best. Listen to When the Levee Breaks.
Yes.
And nobody can do what John Bonham did. The world's oldest professional musician is a female drummer. She's 105 years old. Her name is Viola Smith, and she can still rock with the best of them.
Oh, that's so sweet.
The longest drum roll is 14 hours. World record drum roll.
That's difficult.
The world's largest drum kit has 813 pieces at last count and took 36 years to build up. And yes, Muppet drummer Animal was based on Keith Moon. So there you go. There's your drum facts. It is National Drum Day. Bang on something. Beat on something. Find something to knock the socks off of. What are we listening to this week? Well, this week we haven't been listening to too much. Amy's taking in a good TED Talk. She's going to share that with you next week.
Next week.
But what we're watching, on the other hand,
yes,
what we've been watching is Emily in Paris.
Emily in Paris.
Now, we mentioned last week we'd watched Ted Lasso, the Apple TV series. Emily in Paris is a Netflix series. Mm-hmm. Links to both of those shows will be in the show notes. These are extraordinary series.
They are very unusual.
They're very unusual. We've been watching and we've tried watching some of the other series that friends have been recommending online. We're trying to get through the Queen's Gambit right now, but
yes.
If you can tell by the way I put that, we're trying to get through
it.
It's been a little more of a challenge. It's not our usual thing.
We're sorry. We can't really say too much about it because we haven't completed it. So
it's very well done. It's just a little
not quite our world.
Dark.
Yeah.
Not even dark. Just dark, but anxious and
malaisy.
Anyway,
and
they're obviously
talk too much about it.
It's got its charming elements, and we're going to stick with it because we've heard good things, and the people we've heard the good things from are people whose opinion we respect. But the point is, yes. Emily in Paris,
yes,
Ted Lasso, has something in common with one of our favorite television programs or series, and that is going back to the 1980s.
1985.
The Sullivan presentation of Anne of Green Gables.
Yes.
We have incidentally watched Anne with an E, and that's interesting. It's a little grittier. It's a little closer to the books, but our favorite is still Megan Follows as Anne Shirley.
Kevin, with Sullivan's direction, and so good. I don't know how many times I've watched that. I mean, it must have been 25 times.
And the common denominator is a unstoppable benevolence on the part of the protagonist.
Yes. And a thinking kind of benevolence, figuring it out, which actually...
And not...
solving problems.
Not so much the, typical hero, but unflappable optimism.
Yes. Yes.
It's really extraordinary that shows like Ted Lasso and Emily in Paris have been not just made in 2020, but have been so successful in 2020. And both of them have been renewed for a second season and did really well. Even the critics, who are sometimes a little harsh, have been generally positive on them.
Yeah.
And so in the run-up to Thanksgiving, and as the post-election season kind of continues to wind down, I've been thinking about goodness
Yes.
and graciousness,
Yes.
which are two different words and two different ideas. Good is easy because, we're Ayn Rand fans, so her definitions always beat any others
Yeah.
out there. Ayn Rand said, all that which is proper to the life of a rational being.
That is what the good is.
That is the good. All that which destroys it is the evil.
Yeah, that may sound a little bit broad, and you have to think about it.
It is
but,
broad because goodness is a broad concept.
Yes.
Rand says the objective theory holds that the good is an aspect of reality in relation to man, and that it must be discovered, not invented, by man. So good is
Yeah.
objective. It's not something that we make up.
Right.
It's a concept. It's a fact that we identify.
Right. And it's something I think every person needs to think about and think things through with, and actually induce these ideas, looking at reality, instead of seeing perhaps a list of commandments, suppose,
Yes.
that somebody else put together.
Yes, when we talked about ethics without scarecrows.
Yes. Yes. So
Morality is not a scarecrow to chase away your
right.
pleasures.
And it's not something to obey. It's something to revel in because
Yes.
it really helps you.
So what is the purpose of being good? What is the purpose of goodness? Well, that's like saying, what is the purpose of morality? Or acting morally? Morality is a code of values to guide man's choices and actions. The choices and actions that determine the purpose and the course of his life. So again, all that which is proper to the life of a rational being is the good. All that which destroys it is the evil.
So our friend Peter, he mentions a quotation of the day.
What is his quote of the day?
If you define your terms broadly enough, everyone's a drummer.
I've said that before, not just about drumming, and it's silly, but I always get something out of it. It's like my Post-it notes. There's a wisdom in there that
Yes.
if you define your terms broadly, well, why would you do that? They become meaningless at that point. Well, then you've gone too far. But the point is more to be able to connect your concepts, to do a concepts in a hat type of thing,
Right.
where you pick out one concept and another concept and relate the two, show how things are interconnected.
Yeah, and get that kind of thrill of having a new perspective.
Yes. So I get the same wisdom out of making that observation. For example, if you define your concepts broadly enough, everything is sex.
What about if you define your terms broadly enough, everything is economics.
It is. And sex and economics is a scary set of concepts to pull out of a hat. So we won't go any further with that, but I'm glad that Peter caught on to that. I've used that expression once or twice before in the podcast, and today, November 15th, will not be the last.
Right. Yes, Brittany says, oh, she's so cool. That is important. The fact that good is objective, exists in its own right, and is not man-made. That concept gets hijacked by religion, which perverts and distorts the definition. Yes, it is all about the relationship between man's nature and reality. And that is a metaphysical kind of thing. And Robert is doing something.
Oh, I thought you were going to keep going there.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It's all right. I've lost a note here.
Oh, okay. Well, let me tell you about who David really loves as a drummer. The late filthy Animal Taylor of Motorhead.
Filthy. Phil-Ty.
I guess his name is Philip.
Phil Taylor.
Phil Taylor, yes, of Motorhead. And yes. So I'm not familiar with that.
And he writes provocatively, the antithesis of moral. Well, I'm not a heavy metal guy. So I don't know anything about Motorhead. I don't know anything about I know something about the more mainstream metal bands, but I'll just have to take his word for it.
I'm sure he's extremely fast.
Oh, no doubt.
Does that
Anybody metal is
double bass
fast.
drum thing.
Yep.
It's so great. I love that.
Oh yeah, if you don't have a double bass pedal, I think they throw you out of any metal band.
Yes.
They just laugh you off the stage. So what I lost was my definition of graciousness, which was, I swear I printed it out.
I have one, actually.
And
Funny enough, I have one.
You're going to rescue me here.
Well, there's one here. It's marked by kindness and courtesy. And the other secondary definition is characterized by charm, good taste, generosity of spirit, and the tasteful leisure of wealth and good breeding.
Now that I love. And we've mentioned this on the show before with that definition. Characterized by charm, good taste, generosity of spirit.
Yes.
And the tasteful leisure of wealth and good breeding. See, when I say goodness gracious, I think of goodness, I think of graciousness. But when I think of graciousness, I think of class.
Right.
Not being upper class, lower class, but just being a class act, being self-possessed and having standards.
And having that self-made kind of class. Not, the good breeding idea is a little bit weird because
right.
You really have to choose it.
And they talk about generosity, kindness and generosity. This kind of generosity, a generosity that you can afford. This is not a generosity of self-sacrifice. This is a generosity that's well within your budget. Generosity that comes easily, that comes naturally, that comes without any pain, because it emphasizes your own prosperity. And that doesn't have to be economic prosperity, although that can be an instance of it. Sometimes it's simply a matter of your own moral prosperity, your own self-confidence, your own ability to be good to people, coming from a position of strength. It emphasizes your own prosperity and your own standards. Just as with wealth, so with your own style, your own class, your own identity.
Yes.
Folks will remember I'd mentioned on a podcast and I've written online, treat people not as they deserve to be treated, but as you deserve to treat them. That's often the same thing, and it's an important principle of justice that you give people what they deserve.
Say that again, because I love that quote, and I always try to remember it, and then I forget it.
Treat people not as they deserve to be treated, but as you deserve to treat them.
Yes. You got to decide, how do you want to show up?
That's right. And again, it's a principle of justice. You do have to give people what they deserve, but you're also not the world's policeman. It is not your responsibility to go out and be cruel to every cruel person out there and spend your life being cruel. And it's not your job to go out and reward every good person and give away everything you've got just because somebody hasn't justly gotten everything they deserve. So justice includes justice to yourself.
Yes.
And that means you've got to treat people not as they deserve to be treated, or not just as they deserve to be treated, but as you deserve to treat them.
Yes.
This is about you. You have to imagine that you're in a movie and that you are the protagonist. Now, if I was filming a movie, if I was writing a script, if I was making a television show, and I have the main character, and every time somebody else comes along, the main character has to respond to whatever that person did or said, and never actually has their own plot line. They're just constantly responding to what's going on around them.
Right.
You would say, well, that's probably not going to be a very good show.
Right.
Your life is like that. So this is one of the lessons of Anne of Green Gables and Ted Lasso. and Emily in Paris. The protagonists set the standards. All these other people come along. Take Emily in Paris. American girl goes to Paris, works with a branch of her agency, a Parisian branch of her agency,
A marketing firm.
where they do things in a Parisian way,
Mm-hmm.
and they have a European perspective on life and work and romance and propriety.
Mm-hmm.
And Emily comes in with a very American sense of how things get done.
Yes.
I won't give away spoilers, but there's a clash.
Yes.
And Emily does not change, but she is able to succeed
Yes.
in many ways. She doesn't always succeed, and I wouldn't want you to think that it's Pollyanna kind of show. It's definitely not.
Right.
But again, the protagonists in these all the three of these shows, the protagonist sets the standard. They are what the show is about.
So you're saying that you can be your own protagonist and you can set your own standards.
You absolutely are your own protagonist.
Yes.
These people are what the show's about, and everyone else's actions are in relation to the protagonist. And this is why the protagonist can afford to be gracious
Yes.
and benevolent and kind
And generous in spirit.
and patient and unflappable.
Right. Yes. I love that. That is Emily in Paris, by the way.
Yes.
It's a good show.
And so too with you and you the show, you the movie.
Your name here, the movie.
That's right. I said before, everybody needs to have the spotlight on them,
Yes.
at least every now and then. And this is making that literal. Your Life, the movie. I'm sure that most of our friends are already doing that to a substantial degree. But I need the reminder, and I suspect other people do too.
Oh, Brittany says, a friend posted a meme the other day about wishing people not good or ill, but whatever it is they deserve. Something like that. I can't recall the exact quote.
Yeah, and I know where that comes from, because there are people who say, I wish you well no matter what you've done.
Mm-hmm.
And people go too far with that. And they tell bad people, I hope good things happen to you anyway. Maybe that'll turn you around. I understand that kind of optimism and benevolence, but Brittany's friend might not be that far off base. It depends, again, on what he or she was responding to.
Right.
So I wouldn't want to go, oh, that's terrible. He should be nicer. Because sometimes nice is the absolute worst thing to be.
Yes.
But yeah, you're
Well,
right. I'm a little suspicious when I see that.
Yeah, she might be referring to the idea that it's that sort of backhanded compliment of, I wish you everything that you deserve in life.
Yeah, I hope you get what you deserve. I hope you get what you deserve.
Yes, I hope you get what you deserve, as
is.
opposed to, I hope you get what you deserve. Becky?
So one thing that I ran into when I was throwing some notes together for this week was 10 life lessons we've all learned from Anne Shirley, Anne of Green Gables. And this
And
is
with an E.
And this is from the Sullivan website, which is the official AnneofGreenGables.com.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little frou-frou.
Yeah, it's a little light, I
know.
should say. It's not...
But what I like
Yeah.
about these kinds of lists, and we've done this before, is I like reimagining them from a more rational perspective.
Right, or a more profound perspective, something a
Yes.
little bit more integrated.
Yes, well, yes. So number 10 is daydreaming makes life much more interesting. Well, certainly creativity makes life much more interesting, and daydreaming can be a creative endeavor.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever you're running into, there is never just one way to think about it, or to confront it, or to face it. In fact, one of the best Facebook posts, I won't say of this week, I'll say of this month, is Lisa VanDamme's recent post.
Oh, yes.
And that is worth a read. In fact, I think I still need to add that to the show notes.
Mm-hmm.
But if you haven't yet seen Lisa VanDamme's post, the heading on it is On Parenting, The path is not narrow. You absolutely must read that. And it's long, and whenever I see a long post, I always think, oh, I'm not sure that I'm going to have time for that, or is it really going to be worth reading? It's absolutely worth reading. I shouldn't even try to summarize it, but the general idea is that people all too often face life thinking there's one path to success. There's one thing they should do in any given context. They think their path is narrow.
Right.
And read her post. Oh, it is so worth reading. It's so good.
Excellent.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so when I read something like number 10, daydreaming makes life much more interesting, my immediate reinterpretation is that is, well, creativity
Yes.
makes life much more interesting.
Yes.
And daydreaming can be a part of that.
Asking yourself, what if? Yep.
Yep. It's interesting. There's one on here, for example, number 8. Love means more than anything you can buy in a store. And you've heard that before. You know, the best things in life aren't things, for example. And there's truth and there's wisdom to that, except that there are things you can buy in a store that you love.
Right.
The point is you shouldn't limit yourself
Right.
to the things you can buy in a store. I just don't like when people put that in a way that disrespects
Yes.
things.
The things, the material.
Because we
Yeah.
are things. Everything is things.
Yes. We are.
And
We are made of solid stuff. and you don't want to disregard any, or put the material down in favor of, oh, it's the immaterial, oh, it's a spiritual, it's a tangible, and that's the only thing. That's a that can be a mistake one can make with regard to things like Platonism and things that are kind of put life askew, as it were. Yep.
sorry, I'm just bringing up the chat here, but I think you're keeping a better eye on that than I am.
think
Number
I am.
7 is here. If you give people a chance, they might surprise you. So that gets back to the optimism that unifies those 3 series we talked about. If you give people a chance, they might surprise you, even if they are offhand not the kind of person you think you should give a chance to. And that, again, is where it may be useful to treat people not as they deserve. In other words, if somebody wrongs you, you don't necessarily have to exact punishment on them right away. There may be an opportunity to turn them around. What was the quote by Robert Heinlein? Never forget your enemy isn't a bad guy in his own eyes.
Right.
If you keep that in mind, you may have a way to turn him around and make him your friend. And if not, you can kill him without hesitation.
Right.
Forget the exact wording, but we've brought that up before too.
We have brought that up before.
So yes. If you
Yes.
give people a chance, they might surprise you. It's surprising how few really evil people there are in the world.
Right.
There are some bad people out there. There are some people who, even if they're not that bad, you should give up on them. I'm not Pollyanna. I've seen my share of viciousness. But it's surprising how few really evil people are out there.
Right. About Lisa VanDamme and her wonderful and delightful post. Yeah, Linda chimes in. She says, that Lisa is a force to be celebrated often and by people who know how.
Oh, I think we all know where that phrase is taken from.
Yes.
Little Clark Gable there.
Excellent.
I'm not going to kiss you, but you should be kissed, and by someone who knows how. Kissed often, I think it was.
Right.
Gone with the wind.
Yes.
But Linda is absolutely right. If you're not following Lisa VanDamme on Facebook, change that. Fix that.
Fix that.
Number 6, however things may seem right now, there is always another bend in the road. Yes, next to trying and winning, the best thing is trying and failing. Kind of goes along with better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all.
Yes. And if you do fail, you can always look back and try to figure out what you can glean from that failure and that error, and learn from it. Take that lesson and make yourself stronger and better.
Yes, I know Jennifer is thinking of the counterexample from the Rush song Losing It, but that's the exception to the rule. Better still to watch it die than never have known it. Well, anyway, we're on an
Yes.
optimistic track here. So,
Yeah.
your imagination is your most valuable possession.
Mm-hmm.
It is
In a
in
way.
it is in the way they describe it,
Yes.
in the sense of never losing your sense of wonder. And I love the idea of retaining a sense of wonder, especially at my age. You know, I'm not a little kid anymore, but it's important to keep that alive. Number 3, and this is maybe one of the it's not over-optimistic. Number 3, I'm not going to say anything ahead of time. Number 3, a kindred spirit isn't very hard to come by if you really look.
Well, that means that you have to be open to a kindred spirit in order to see one.
And there are some startling relationships in the Anne of Green Gables films.
Yes.
You know, whether it's with Diana's grandmother or later with the teacher at the school.
Mm-hmm.
People who, you know, appear to be substantial antagonists.
Yes.
But with Anne of Green Gables, you can never tell. Sometimes they remain substantial antagonists and a real thorn. But as often as not, Anne is able to turn that around.
Something that she has in common with Emily in Paris, or Emily in Paris has something in common with Anne of Green Gables.
That's right. Don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. See, that would seem to be contrary, but it's not. It's so well integrated with these other ideas. And always stands up for what is right and defends herself.
Mm-hmm. So she has integrity.
Yes. And learn to love the things that make you unique, though that doesn't always happen overnight.
Yes, especially when you're young.
Yes. Well, this is the You Show. And, damn it,
Yeah.
never forget that.
Yeah, I guess you have to ask yourself, or we all have to ask ourselves, is there anything unique about myself that I haven't fully appreciated?
I don't think there's anybody who doesn't have something about them worth appreciating.
Mm-hmm.
Because any generally decent person is the most amazing thing in the world. I mentioned earlier, you know, when we said the best thing in life aren't things. Best things in life you can't find in a store. The kernel of truth behind that, as much as I bristle against anything that sounds anti-capitalist or anti-commercial, is that other people really are the highest value after yourself.
Yes, they are.
There's nothing out there as good as people.
Just interacting with people doesn't cost you anything, and you can gain so much from it.
Yes.
Now, Jennifer does say, a puppy is love you can
A
buy.
puppy is love you can buy. That's right. Well, anybody who said money can't buy you love, doesn't know where to shop, doesn't know what they're doing. Money can't buy you happiness? Huh, where are you
You
shopping?
just have to kind of, well, in that way, you have to use your imagination to be creative about your money and in what you want and what your
Yes.
values are.
Yes.
And you also need to learn what is unique about you and how that translates into your own values and how you can actually, you can actualize those values in reality using money.
Yes.
So see integrations and things.
Integration is the thing. So with all that in mind, again, this is the lead up to Thanksgiving.
It is.
Yes. I've got a couple of announcements, not about our show, but about other folks that I've got to mention. But first, your homework for the week is just preparation for the next show. What I want you to do, and what I'll be doing, is write down 2 things that you are grateful for.
Okay.
Things that you give thanks for. Coming up on Thanksgiving week, what are 2 things you're grateful for? But here's the second part of that assignment. 2 of those, and I always say write them down. Don't just do this in your head. Piece of paper, pen, write them down. What are 2 things you're grateful for? And pick 2 that really, get you in the gut, that really matter to you. Part 2 of this assignment. What 2 things do your people, the people in your life, what 2 things do your people appreciate about you? if you have any trouble brainstorming that one, try answering what 2 things should people appreciate about you.
So you can't cheat and just ask them?
You could, if you really get stuck on this one,
Yeah.
but I think you'll learn more finding the answer in your own context.
So what 2 things should other people appreciate me for?
Or what 2 things do people appreciate about you?
Okay.
Ideally,
Yes.
yeah, you should already know what they do appreciate about you.
Right.
What are you getting the love for? What are you getting gratitude for? And again, if you can't think of 2, try what should you be getting gratitude for. So that's your homework.
And Linda Cordair of Cordair.com, Quent Cordair Fine Art Gallery. She says, number 1 is easy, number 2 is harder.
So you know what you're grateful for. It's harder to say, here's what people are grateful to me about.
Yeah.
I don't know. Somebody in Linda's position, that should be pretty easy. In fact, that relates to one of the announcements I'm going to give.
Oh.
Right after I tell you the Post-it note for the week, I just have a note that says gifted. Just a yellow pad for you who are listening and aren't seeing video. It just says gifted.
What does this mean?
Well, I only found out late in life that I was gifted. Except the kinds of things that we describe as gifted, creativity or IQ or whatever a gifted, usually it's a gifted child. We don't really talk about gifted adults. When I realize how much people have to offer,
yeah.
I realize we're all gifted.
Yes.
And I posted this on Facebook earlier this week. We are all gifted a life. We're all born one day with a life.
I know.
And every value in the world, every value out there is now out there for you.
Right.
Whether you're able to attain everything you want, achieve everything you want, it's all out there. And you get to pick, in any given moment, you get to pick what to do, what to focus on, what to think about, what to celebrate, what to love. We are all so extraordinarily gifted.
Yeah.
That word will be sitting on my mirror for the next week. Just the word gifted.
Just a reminder of how wonderful people are and how amazing it is that we are human beings with the capacities for all the virtues and even the creativity, even the thought that we're capable of.
And as I said before, we live in 2020 in a division of labor society.
Yes.
We are surrounded by miracles.
Right.
Not least of which is ourselves. But we've all got gifts coming, too. I mentioned last week I had a lot of gifts for you. I mentioned Aurum Naturals candles.
Yes.
Put a link to those in the show notes. I'll repeat that this week. If you want to buy the best candles for somebody for Christmas, and you're stuck at home during pandemic times, or things are normal for you, but you want to send something across the miles, go to Aurum Naturals, aurum-naturals.com, and send them the best candles made in the United States.
Yes.
I can't tell you all of the high-profile people I know.
All right, I think that we are back.
We're back. What on earth?
I believe.
Try a refresh here.
Refreshing the page.
Oh my gosh.
Let's see.
Well, I think there you're just seeing a playback.
Oh, maybe.
Maybe not.
No, we're back.
We're back. All right. Hey, folks, we're back. Well, we had gone through all the content, but we had a couple special announcements that we absolutely have to get in. So I'm going to cut right to the chase here.
Thank you for waiting.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if this shows up as a separate stream on YouTube, welcome to part 2. I think on Facebook it's going to be all in one.
Yes.
Lord knows what happened there. Internet was fine. We were receiving. We just weren't sending. So, important announcement this week. You may have already seen it on Facebook, but if you haven't, we've talked before about Quent Cordair Fine Art. We've talked about this amazing gallery in Napa, California. We've talked about how you can shop online at Cordair.com, making them effectively a worldwide gallery. Exciting news just came out today from Quent Cordair. Quent and Linda say our biggest news in 12 years, we're opening a new gallery location in Jackson, Wyoming.
Jackson, Wyoming.
A new location.
Wow.
Yeah.
Didn't I hear somewhere there was like 3,000 square feet of space?
Well, Quent wrote, while we remain committed to the continued success of our treasured Napa Gallery, We're shifting a portion of the precious eggs in our charge to the best second basket we can find. By all measures, Jackson will serve as an excellent location from which to continue offering art of our kind and quality. More on the advantages of Wyoming generally and the allurements of Jackson particularly soon. Today we're signing a lease for 3,000 square feet of fine retail space within a half block of Jackson Square, the heart of the booming, wealth-attracting community. This week we'll be packing art and supplies for the first shipment to the new location with the goal of opening in Jackson in time for the holidays.
That's amazing.
How awesome is that? It's a long announcement with additional information, including ways that you can help to make sure that this expansion is a success. So definitely go to Quent Cordair's wall on Facebook. It's a public post. You can read it whether you're friends with Quent or not. And it's amazing. So all of our congratulations to Quent and Linda Cordair of Quent Cordair Fine Art. And
that's amazing. You know, when I heard about this, I thought, my goodness, wow, what an adventure. What an adventure. And I know that, I think in Wyoming, I think the perhaps, I'm not entirely sure, but perhaps the business, the atmosphere there for business is a lot better. Obviously, I think anywhere is better than California, isn't it?
California is the most wonderful and amazing place.
Yeah.
But if you follow politics, you may also tend to think it's the worst place in the world and you'd never want to go there. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge. To celebrate this move, Brian Faulkner left a comment on the thread about this. Okay. And if you don't know Brian Royce Faulkner, he is a poet.
Yes, he is. And he does know it.
Very a poet, and he knows it. Very charming. Link to his website is in the show notes, brianroycefaulkner.com. And he left this comment. They're rolling up in Jackson to ring in satisfaction more high. The art is half the story, their characters wing glory, and altogether joy will greet the eye. They're rolling up in Jackson, great art their main attraction. To Wyoming they are homing, up the mountains they are coming, and life was ne'er so happy or so high. That's how Brian writes.
That's so wonderful. Very sweet. That's wonderful.
So congratulations, Quent and Linda. That's such an exciting announcement, and we can't wait to hear how it goes.
Yes, and they are still obviously accepting offers in their Club Cordair program.
Yes. These are easy ways that you can help support the success of this new venture.
Yes.
And bring great art into your life.
At Cordair.com.
Yes. So wonderful. The last note I had was just about a conversation I had with Chris Land, who is writing the book on humor. I've mentioned this a couple times before. Yes. The book is called Why Funny is Funny. And what's fun about this, not only that he's written the book that finally explains once and for all what humor is and why it works.
Right.
But he's got a website out there that you can go to. The link is in the show notes where he explains many of the ideas in the book. He's confirmed the book will be published in 2021. And as a lead up to publication, Chris and I will be having a conversation, which we're planning to do here on the 5 Minutes show. It will be a long conversation. We chatted about the kinds of ideas we would like to talk about and essentially had a pre-interview that lasted for 2 hours.
Yeah, just 2 hours.
And it won't be 5 minutes, I can tell you that. But that's going to be worth hearing. In the meantime, you can go to Chris's website, get an idea what the premises, what the theory in the book is. It's comprehensive. It's hard. It's not.
It is.
You know, I tend to say all the time, if you can't say something in 25 words or less, you don't really understand it. Well, in this case, it would be like saying if you can't say what psychology is in 25 words, if you can't say what physics is, if you can't give me all of the field of logic in 25. Chris explained it can't be done. You know, he has a way of describing the book. Yes. But one of the points he makes is that it turns out humor isn't just a subset of psychology. Or it isn't just a twist in logic. It's not a part of some other field. It turns out if you really want to get a handle on humor, it's a field, it's a school in and of itself.
Nice.
this is going to be fun.
Yes.
And it's going to be funny because it's a book about humor, so all of the examples are jokes. So.
And Robert and I kind of already know what we're getting into because Chris Land did a really excellent presentation at one of our last GlowCons. That's our Great Lakes Objectivist conferences.
Yes.
And it was a fantastic presentation. Now, we do have a question actually from YouTube.
Yes.
From our friend Sam on YouTube. Thank you. He says, now this is a little bit of broad kind of question,
We
but
got provisos here now. I'm worried.
But I think we can use today's content to answer this question.
Okay.
What's your advice for someone unsure about what direction to take in life? A career change is a big decision.
Yes. My advice is
Yes.
cover your best and worst case scenarios.
Well, I want to understand a little bit more. I'm assuming that since he's putting in a career change is a big decision, that means that this isn't his first career that he's getting into. That if you want to change your career, yes, have a worst case and a best case scenario.
Well, the reason I say that is because I've done this a couple times.
Yes, he has.
Including retiring from IT a year and a half ago. And, or has it been 2 years now?
No.
And, I'm too young to be retired, obviously. But I wanted to write, and I wanted to start a podcast, and I wanted to do more intellectual endeavors. So, in order to make that possible, I knew what my best case scenario was. I write a book, it becomes a bestseller. Scrooge McDuck diving into piles of gold coins.
Yes.
The worst case scenario is, what if I never make another dollar in my life, and my poor wife has to go through the grueling efforts of supporting me.
Yes, I'll be your sugar
And
mama.
so I put enough money in the bank that would be doable as well. So the worst case scenario is covered. And that made it easier then to say, okay, with all that handled, what do I want to do? Now, the process of figuring out what you want to do, what your next career should be, what your life's direction should be, is not something that I could cover at the tail end of a podcast like this. I am studying that because I think I'll be doing some life coaching as a sort of side gig. But what I ask you to do in this case is embrace the freedom you have to make that choice.
Yes.
So you cover your best and worst case scenarios because now instead of a narrow path, you've got a wide path.
Right.
I could do any of these 10 different things.
Yes, and this is something that has come up for me because I love everything, almost everything. I have so many hobbies. I have so many things that I could be expert at, if not proficient at. What do I pick? So my question to myself has often been, Amy, in 5 or 10 years, when you're so many years old, what will you regret not doing? Not having completed, not having started even.
Yeah, it's the deathbed scenario.
Yes,
which is a part of making that decision.
Yeah, and in that way, of course, the idea is to then ask yourself, you have a list of things that you want to do, and my heart would break if I wasn't this in 10 years, or if I hadn't fulfilled this, or even started or tried at least to do this particular thing. And what's interesting about this is a little bit philosophical here or psychological, but I always thought that, I shouldn't go by my emotions. I shouldn't be thinking to myself, here's a list, what do I feel most passionate about? But actually, I've learned that is exactly what you do. You are a unique individual. You have specific values that you are more, that you can derive more joy out of, because you are you. You are nobody else. You get to decide what you want to do. So yes, you could certainly use passion or enthusiasm or love as a gauge to figure out what you want to do if you're having a hard time choosing.
Right. And Brittany gives a serious answer here. You could take an aptitude test at a career center. One of the things that I would say is my rule about always write things down should apply to this. If you are brainstorming your next career move, make sure you're doing it on paper. I can't overemphasize that enough. Doing these exercises in your head will not get the result. It's just not going to work. Get it out on paper, externalize, and that will make it objective. It will compel you to be more objective, and it will give you something to go back to. Even if you change your mind, if you scratch things out, if you decide, oh yeah, that's not what I want, but now that I've written it down, I can see that's not what I want.
Yes, and Sam replies. He says, I feel there's not enough time in the day to do everything I want to do.
Yes, well, I know that feeling.
Yes.
That's why I was, 56 before I finally retired, and because I was determined to put money in the bank and make sure that I was really well poised to do this. You're right, there aren't enough hours in a day. What's fun to do with that is start tracking your activities. Don't be hard on yourself, and don't take a military attitude with it, but just a day, 2 days, 3 days.
Yeah.
Track your activities, see what you do with this 5 minutes, that 10 minutes, that half hour. See where your time actually goes. I'd reached a point where I don't watch television, and that's something I really only picked up again during COVID times, where I eliminated time wasters.
Yeah.
And you can do that if you have any. Maybe you don't. Maybe every hour is productive. When I got into the IT field, I figured out what I would have to do. And, Amy will remember that I was coming home from work and, working 9-10 hours a day. And then I would hit the books, and I would go to I had a lab set up with multiple computers, my home network, and it was all set up to simulate a server or lab environment so that I could get my MCSE, and I achieved that in 7 months, which is pretty quick for MCSE. There were 6 tests involved in that at the time. And so, yes, you figure out what it's going to take to get what you want, and you figure out how to fit that into your schedule. Don't know your situation. That might be harder. It might be easier. It might be impossible without making some substantial changes. But one thing I know is that if you want a different result, you will have to take different action.
Yes. Yes.
Wanting to be on a different path is not the same as stepping onto a different path.
Right. David recommends a book called 3 Reasons It's So Hard to Follow Your Passion by J. Jakimowitz. Harvard Business Review.
Yes. So that's in the chat there. Take a look at that.
All right.
I hope he gives like an answer to, well, here's 3 reasons it's hard, but here's how you get around that. No, it's just why it's hard.
That's funny. You open it up and there's just one paragraph. Okay. All right. So, wrapping up.
So, with all of that said, reminder, show notes are online. You'll find the show notes attached to this episode within 5 minutes after the show ends, with links to all the fun stuff we discussed, including some of those exciting announcements. If you want to see past shows, go to youtube.com/Robert Nasir. From there, you can pull up playlists of themes that we've covered. You can pull up all of the 36 previous episodes. And from there, that's where you can share the show.
Yes.
Help this show go, not viral, that sounds depressing in 22. Help this show go large.
Yes. Spread the love and the joy that is 5 minutes with Robert Nasir.
We've had a few surprising shares this week.
Yes.
From folks who, oh my gosh, I didn't know they were going to share that episode.
It's always a delight and a thrill for us when we see you sharing our shows.
Thank you so much for that. If there's any wisdom in these shows, I promise 5 minutes worth in every episode, then I hope you will share this with friends of yours who may get something out of it. If you want to help the show get better, 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir is a Facebook group where you can share your ideas for the show. Let us know what you'd like us to talk more about, talk less about. Verbal tics that I use that I need to stop using. Such a challenge. If you want to support the show directly, you can contribute to the show.
Yes, you can.
As several people already do and already have.
Yes.
We have a Patreon set up. You can become a patron of 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir at patreon.com/Robert Nasir. If you prefer to support the show directly without Patreon, a one-off contribution, feel free to message me on Facebook. I will give you a PayPal email address, and I will give you my eternal gratitude.
Yes.
Next week will be our Thanksgiving episode. Now, you know we've done episodes on gratitude. We've done episodes on benevolence. We've done several episodes that revolve around these themes, but next week's show, we're going to hammer it home.
Yes, we are.
Because next week is not only the last show before Thanksgiving, it's the last show before the thing I am most grateful for. It's the last show before our wedding anniversary.
Oh.
Be there next Sunday. Do not miss it. We are looking forward to being with you. Until then, as always, we wish you success. We wish you happiness. We wish you graciousness and goodness and just be who you want to be, not who the world's trying to make you.
Yes.
And as always, we wish you love.